Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All right, well, let's begin. Aisha, could you lead us in the Fatiha?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Thank you. All right, so today we'll be looking at two images. One is the barzakh, and so the barzakh is that membrane, or it's the separator between two things. And so barzakh is one. And the second will be nur, so light. And we'll have to be able to go in this, as with Ibn Arabi, it's always very, one can't really spell everything out. You have to put it out there, you have to put this out there, and then in ourselves, it has to come together. So as it comes together, that's the key, and that can't in a sense be spoken about or of. So let's go ahead to look at our first slide. Okay. So okay. Is the sound okay and the slide, everything look okay? Good, all right, good. Here we go. So we've looked at this before. This is the hyperbolic world. And you can see in there, that's Escher's famous triangles that are in a hyperbola. And the idea of the hyperbola is that those triangles are infinite. They just keep going on and on and on. But they're in a sense squeezed in a way into a finite bound. So this infinite infinitude is the key to the world that we are in. And so hyperbolas and hyperbolic, all of these are very crucial for us. So this 1/x curve is very important. So you see the x and y axis. The lines get closer and closer and closer to the y or the x axis, but they never touch. And so this concept of coming closer and closer but never touching, in a sense, these x and y axes would be a barzakh, a membrane that doesn't allow the one to come over to the other side. And so, and the way this looks as a projected image is if you take, down here on the bottom image, you take this ball with light inside, it casts a shadow, which is the shadow, these Escher shadows, or these hyperbolic shadows. And so you have triangles or forms getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so an infinite number of these forms inside a bounded volume. Okay, so this is the concept of barzakh, closer and closer and closer, and then there's the other side. And so the first experience we have of that, or one of the experiences we have of that, is sleep, when you get closer and closer to sleep and then suddenly you're asleep and there's no passageway between them. You haven't moved through anything. You've just been on one side and now you're on the other side. Okay. So this finite volume with an infinite surface area, in the, I guess, 18th century, this was beginning to explore in Italy, the idea of taking this 1/x graph and rotating it or revolving it. And when you revolve it, you get this Gabriel's horn. So very significant that this is Gabriel's horn. And Ibn Arabi says that this barzakh, this membrane, is a horn. He says it's horn shaped. And he says it's also horn shaped as in an animal's horn, that the animal's horn would be, thick on the bottom, and then it would reach up like this. So that's a horn. And so that, he says, is the image of the barzakh. That's what things look like. So this barzakh is infinite surface area of finite bounded volume. Okay. So let me go ahead and read this one. And so we also, when we talk about barzakh, we talk a lot about this orientable and non-orientable strip. So let's keep that strip and that circle in mind. So Ibn Arabi is going to give us now the second aspect, the idea of light and circle. So let's look at that. Learn that since the sealing ends are exactly the beginnings, and that we know because when you put an arbitrary notch on a circle, that notch marks the beginning and it marks the end at the same time. The moment the mark is made, you have first and last. So we learn that being in the images, that's us, is in fact at the vantage position of a circle. So we are a circle, we live in a circle, we are, our existence is circular. Her pre-eternity leans to her timeless eternity. So this leaning, her pre-eternity leans to her timeless eternity. Therefore, the God as divinity, so ilaha, the God, cannot be understood without understanding that there is his subject to divinity. So in English, it's like the godded over. So it's his subject to divinity. And the cherisher, the Rabb, cannot be understood without understanding that there is his cherished, the marbub, the one who is the object of the cherisher. And the each intelligible step level is not exactly the next. So we have divinity, we have angels, plants, animals, humans. It is just as we know that between the sealing end, this is khatam, the sealing end, and the preceding beginning, there is an intelligible differentiation by which you may say about the one a preceding beginning and about the other a sealing end. So even though the moment we mark the circle, the first is the last, we can still have an intelligible way of understanding that, oh, there is a first and there's a last, and almost temporal in a way, in a time-based way. So we're looking at the first and the last. Now he's going to tell us in the beginning of his path, when Ibn Arabi's path began, when he was first on his path, and remember, we've talked about this a lot, our relation to Mother Earth. Well, right here, he said in the beginning, he wanted to strip himself away from his body, his bulk, which is in a sense saying, I want to not be earth. And so this is very much an individuation. So the way the child individuates from the mother and the parents, the same way Ibn Arabi is saying that when he was on the beginning of his path, he wanted to individuate, put himself apart from his body. So he says, now when I learned in the beginning of my situation that the pursuit is as I have cited, I stripped myself off from this, my bulk, body, with a stripping based on knowledge, based on circumstance, on account of my ignorance of the position of the true in this bulk, and a lack of knowledge in me that God has a face in everything. So this is encouraging that we can all understand that if we have individuated and tried to say, let me get away from my body, away from Mother Earth and see what is, he says this is a mistake, or this is something that you learn is not helpful, because God has a face in everything. So the nafs, which is a special face, is looking at everything as seeing Allah in everything. So then when I attained this state, separate from the strange extraneous bulk, I looked on him as if he were a sleeveless cloak, all the cloth pieces intensely black. I did not see any light at all. I asked about this blackness. From where has it come to here? I was told this is the intense blackness of nature, In fact, the light blockings are 3, and he'll give us 2 more after this, but the first one is, you people see some of them over others, light blockings over others, darknesses over darknesses, such as that when you retract your hand, you can hardly see your hand, although you ought to, because your hand is now closer and closer to you. You still can't see your hand. This is a kind of a night. Now you do not see when approaching closer, so you get closer and closer, you still can't see anything. So how about seeing something farther away? Therefore, the light blocking is a divine veil, veiling us from the being of the true. So when I saw my bulk and my darkness, I knew that if I did not have a light from some perspective, my being able to look at it would be inauthentic. So if there weren't some kind of light there, I would not be able to see even that I have a bulk. So I asked about the light which he prepared in order to connect my vision to this bulk. So when I want to look at this bulk, at the mother, at the body, it was said to me, a light of being, by this you will see it. So that the wujud, the being, the breath is something that you then can see. So I looked at me from the place of my I am, seeing this light blocking bulk that I am. I saw the light blocking shadow extended flush against me. So this shadow is extending flush against me. And that's where we get the shadow play. And I saw my light not making the shadow disappear. So when light comes, the shadow would disperse. But in this situation, the light comes, the shadow is there, and you see the shadow, but the light, that you flash the light onto the shadow, and the shadow doesn't disappear. So there's something there. I was wonderstruck. It was said to me, the light blockings of your enabled status will not disappear from you. So you'll never not be this enabled slave. You see, this is a distinguishing characteristic which you have based on your that. You are not necessary of being in your that. So there is the one who has being, and then there's the rest of us, all of us, who have being which is not ours, doesn't belong to us, so we can't control it. I asked, so who is to me a light with no light blocking in it? Said to me was, you will not find it ever. So I said, therefore I will not witness my creator ever, because he is pure light and pure being. Said to me was, you will never witness whoever, except based on you. This is why you never see who ever in a single image, and you never encompass who with knowledge. Okay. So we have this barzakh and this light. Now let's see if we can, while we listen to the Ilahi, these things might begin to clarify for us. So,
Nur Muhammad, Nur Muhammad, Nur Muhammad, illallah, Nurun ala Nur, Nurun ala Nur, Allah Ali Muhammad. The angel split my breast, remove my heart, cleansing one less drop of human dark, making me a vessel of revelation, filled with radiance for all the worlds. Nur Muhammad, Nur Muhammad, Nur Muhammad, illallah, Nurun ala Nur, Nurun ala Nur, Allah Ali Muhammad. Allah is the eye by which I see 18,000 worlds come forth from me, for I was a prophet from eternity, before Adam was water and clay. Nur Muhammad, Nur Muhammad, Nur Muhammad, illallah, Nurun ala Nur, Nurun ala Nur, Allah Ali Muhammad.
Thank you. Yeah. So now we look at this barzakh, a little bit more detail here. So learn that this alighting place, so this is in one of the chapters, one of the surah of Quran, Ibn Arabi is exploring it and saying, in this surah, you will learn about the barzakh. So he's saying there's a true based barzakh, something that's based on haqq. The barzakh spatially encompasses the people in it. So this is saying that while it's bounded, it encompasses them. And it is not as they think it is. No, it is rather just as God informs us in his book, in his statement about the two seas. The two seas will crash against each other. They will be thrown to meet, but will not cross over. Between the two seas is a barzakh. They do not transgress. They will not cross over, overstep. The truth of the barzakh is that there is no barzakh inside. So that means there is no volume. So it's a null volume bounded surface. It's a null hyper surface. So it's a hyper surface, which means it can have directions and dimensions, but it has no volume. It has no stuff inside. It's no place inside. It is the one throwing together what is between the two with itself. So there is not a separate thing that comes out and separates the two, and then you can pull it out and say, let's measure it. It has no volume. It has direction and orientation, but it has no volume. Now, if the very face itself, which is thrown to meet one of two matters, which is between the two, is exactly the face which is thrown to meet the other, then this is the true base barzakh. So here's a face that faces this and faces that, and it is exactly the same face that faces here, that faces here. So this is back to our non-orientable strip, because it's the same, inside is the same as the outside. It's a surface. So that strip tells us that there's an outside and there's an inside, or there's a visible and there's an invisible, but there is no place between them. It is only a surface. It is just the surface. And if that's the case, then separation emerges visibly between the things, and the separator is a single entity. And when you learn this, you will know what the barzakh is. So this, the example he first brings up in the mysteries of purity, so way back in the sections on the law, he brings up much later again. And then I've only figured out why this is so important, because I worked on it for so many years with mysteries of purity until he then says way out here in book 28 or something, then he explains it. So now we got it. Okay, so, and who recognizes this, recognizes the law of the lawgiver when he said, indeed, God created water pure, nothing polluting it, despite the arrival of pollution in it, no doubt. So here's a vessel of water, and there's pollution in it. But we know that the water is pure and there is nothing polluting it. So how do we reconcile all of these ideas that there's impurities in there, but there's also water, and the water is pure, and then this vessel then is pure? So how do we understand these two sides? As the pollution is differentiable from the water remains pure in the root. So you can always say, here's water and here's the impurity. Yet it's extremely difficult to remove the pollution from the water. But this, although I can say this is water and this is pollution, I can't, it's very difficult to separate and take the pollution out of the water. So the lawgiver did not prevent us from using water in which is pollution because the water is polluted or was made polluted. No, we are prevented from using anything which is pollution. So we're not prevented to use it saying that, oh, there's impurity and that prevents me from using it. No, but I am prevented from using impurity or washing with or drinking impurity. It is because we are not able to separate the part which is pollution from the part which is pure water. Between the pollution and the water is a preventive barrier, a barzakh, because of which the two are not thrown together to meet. If the two were thrown together to meet, the water would become pollution. So learn this. Okay, do we all see where he's going with this one? So we have this barzakh, and it faces the divine, and it faces us. It faces the cherisher, and it faces the cherished. And there is a barzakh between that never lets the two transgress. So the shadow play, the shadow puppets and the shadows never can enter and go across to the other place. And the who, which is there on the other place, can never cross the barrier and come into this place. And yet we are taught by Sharia, by law, by the lawgiver, how to use this situation, how to work with this situation. The way we work with this situation is we know that what is on this side is pure and good and palatable and drinkable, even though it has things in it which are impure, even though it has darknesses and impurities and pollutions in it. Because the pollutions and the darkness which are in it have never crossed the membrane into the purity of the water. And so then we also then are thankful for the Sharia, which tells us, how do I deal with this situation? You use water which you can drink. So if the water you cannot drink the water, then that's not water that you use. But water that you could drink, even though it has grains of sand in it, even though it has taints in it, is pure water, because the pureness of the water has never been infiltrated, because it's filtered out. It's never been infiltrated by pollution. And so when we look at this side, we say, here is pureness. Here is pure light. Here is pure goodness. Even though there are impurities and everything else racing about along with me, floating around and so on. But even though they're floating around and I'm immersed in all this impurities and pollution, the pollution has never infiltrated the purity, the goodness, the trueness. And that's where we are in the beginning. So this is how Ibn Arabi says, the slave, the abd, is never not a slave, can never have infiltrated into the slave being the Rabb, the master, the Lord. So when I think let's look at the bottom two lines here. So from Quran, Ya Maryam, anna laka hadha. So this is this word anna. So that's A-N-N, long A. And so we know what the word anna means by looking at the Quran. And the Quran says, Ya Maryam, O Mary, anna, whence, from where comes laki, to you, hada, this food? And she answers, it is from Allah. So this is how this word particle, this word is understood. Whence comes to you, that is probably, we know now, from Allah, this food, excuse me, whence comes unto you this food? So this is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, who says, Nurun anna arahu. So this is, of course, causes centuries of discussion about what this means. And it means many, many things, as we will see here. So the first, nur, light. So it's nur, it's not the definitive, it's the universal, a light, the light which is all light. Nurun. So a light, or light with a capital L, or as light. So it could also be understood as light, or the light. Anna, whence cometh unto. So from where does it come? From where shall it come? From where shall I? And then arahu. So this could be, from whence does it come, this light? I see who, by which or which I see as who or as light. So arahu means I see him, or I see light, so that the masculine pronoun then is light. So I see him, I see light, I see who. We also have to hear that there's a who there. It also could mean arahu, he shows light, he shows who. So it's something like a light, or as the light, whence shall I come to see who? So light, from there I shall see who. So with that, let's look at how when Ibn Arabi moves into this, has a whole chapter, in a sense, on this one statement. So this is the recognition of a meeting place where we meet. And the idea of meeting is that we meet, we never cross, but we meet. It's a place that we meet. The secret which he spoke about, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was asked to help them understand the vision of his cherisher he had, he was asked, did you see your cherisher on the night of the ascension, on the Miraj, on the Isra? He said, light, whence I saw who, or from where I saw who. Klaus, if you could read the poem for us.
Light. How can the shadow see the light when he is made by the light? You stand in existence as an entity in the brilliant radiating of who. If you are adorned with the distinguishing character of light, it is you who have the property of the radiating brilliance, but in the raiment of who? But in the raiment of who? The spirit is a shadow, and the entity is an organic body displaying him. Based on light essence, you see who in the nigh lowering of who. Only a generous youth perceives the one who we are speaking about. Someone of intense seclusion. So you see who in the brilliant radiance of who. And you may see who, you who turn away with your image form from who. He clarifies for you, to me was the turning of you.
Ibn Arabi will cite the Quran, that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Of light, there is the one who is perceived by means of it, or him, the light. So light is a veil hiding you from himself and you and the world. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, God has 70,000 veils, or 70 veils. The doubt is on my part, which is 70,000 or 70, made of light and light blockers. The hadith continues. Thus, a veil of light vis-a-vis these veils is one, and the light blockers, which are veils, are the remaining 69 or 69,999 veils. So the light is exactly the veil hiding you, and the light is the one veiling himself. So by himself, he veils himself. Therefore, light is never seen. And the light blocker, even if she is a veil, she is something seen because of her correlation which exists between her and the seer. You see, there is, after all, no other light blocker in being but the light blocker, which is the existence beings. Now he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asked God in his prayer to make him light. When he learned that God is light, and when he learned that the least, lowest light is enfolded inside the greatest, highest light. And he learned also that the true is the entirety of that by which the slave is a slave from all facets. And that in the place of his huwiyat, who he is, who the slave is, he has no distinguishing epithet and no adjective. So we learn that the epithet-based correlation to him and the adjective is nothing but a correlation to the true. It is not where there is an adjective of the true. No, it is based on his huwiyat, but the slave is not cited and discussed using his own huwiyat. No, instead he is cited and discussed using the adjectives that are established in him, and they are nothing but the huwiyat of the true. Therefore, his statement was, and make me light. This is exactly the statement, and make me you. Now, you is not something done or made. So he said to Hu, make arise in me witness knowledge that I am indeed you, so that I may be differentiated from the other Hu, the Huyat of the world. So the Abd has no distinguishing epithet. The Abd, the slave, is just the slave. And so Abu Bayezid Bistami says he's told to approach Allah with humility and lowering himself. And then when he gets there, he is said, now go off into the world, and anyone who sees you will see me. So because anyone who sees Bayezid Bistami doesn't see any adjectives that belong to Bayezid Bistami. So Allah says, they will see me. And we know about the awliya, the friends, the walis, that when they are seen, Allah is remembered. And that's because they are slaves that have no distinguishing adjectives or characteristics. Okay.
In the darkness, your reason, mystic darkness of the heart. From behind primal the mountains, the moon of truth never sent forth. Light of prophet, light of brother, light of my life, praying my love, emerald moon of shiny glory of our realms, light reveal the light of Allah, and lightening the universe. Now receives the book of life from Allah's angel of red light. Early morning, sun of wisdom, source of life of man and jinn, annihilation of my darkness, living life of perfect faith. Oh, not giving son of Sharia, oh, king son of final day. Oh, first light of the honor, now guidance in life. Ya Nurullah Shifa, Ya Nurullah, Ya Nurullah Fika, Ya Nurullah, Ya Nur al-Anwar, Ya Nur al-Nur, Ya Nur Muhammad, Ya Nur, Ya Nur. Most precious Allah, with refine us, lovingly exalt light of our soul.
Thank you. So, now, as the matter is this way, so light does not enfold in light, and indeed it is a single light in the entity of an image of creation. So on the Wednesday night at 3 a.m., a little after 3 a.m., I was awake. I woke up suddenly, and we've had a lot of snow here. It's very, very cold. So I looked to see if the wood stove had any embers. And there was some beautiful embers, so I put some logs on there. That's the only way we get heat. So from 3 o'clock onwards, the house got a little bit warmer, so that was nice. Looked out, and there's almost a full moon. So it's only, I guess, tomorrow is the full moon. So almost full moon, and the snow, with the moonlight on it. And so I began to go through, what I know, assemble all the things that I know, and try to find out how that all comes together. So what do I know about the moon And all right, the moon is getting light from the sun, which is blocked by the veil of the earth, and the moon. So the moonlight is not the same as starlight or sunlight, and so all of these things, started putting them all together, and then Ibn Arabi says, so look at what is astounding in this name light. Baki, you still have your mic on. Look at what is so astounding in this name light, Nur. The creation is light blocking, and it does not stand still before the light, because light makes light blocking creations flee. So when you turn light on, the light blocking flees. And light blocking creation does not see the light. And there is, after all, no light but the light of the true. This is why he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, light whence I saw who, because he sees of me only his who, and my light blocking does not perceive him. So this is the Nurun anna arahu, light whence I saw who. And then Ibn Arabi says the rest of the sentence then, fa innahu, because he, marahu, sees minni, about me or of me, illa, only huiyatuhu, only his who. So when Allah looks, the light looks, all that is seen is the who. And so this, all that is seen is the who. I began to then ask more questions about, so this circle, the first and the last. So the first light, the first one looked at, we call the Nur Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you call the first intellect, it's the first light. And then we know that as a circle, the first light is then the sealing end as well, the last light, the last sealing one. So then I began to continue asking, who is then the Nur Muhammad? How is he differentiated from these other slaves? Like the slave, like Bayezid Bistami says, that who goes out and says, when you are seen, I will be seen. And the awliya, when they are seen, Allah is remembered. So what's the differentiation? And then I began to see, and then we have ibad Allah, the creatures, the slaves of God. And Allah says, ibadi, my slaves. So what's the difference between this first slave, this first light, and all the rest of the slaves of Allah, the ibad Allah, that Allah correlates to himself by saying, ibadi, my slaves. And I realized there is no differentiation. And so there is no differentiation. This first abd is all of the ibad, all of these slaves. And at the end, there will be this last sealing figure, and we'll see how that works. So we go back to these orientable strips and non-orientable strips. The orientable strip, so the non-oriental strip, the circle comes to the throne of the cosmic throne. And we hear and know that Ar-Rahman is the name of this throne. And so Rahma, kind mercy, Rahma, is the one that presides over this entire cosmos. And this Rahma then, we hear that you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you were sent only as a Rahma to the worlds. And so this Rahma comes to the cosmic throne and then splits into this loop, which has 4 places, 4 orientable places. The first place is night. And so when this Rahma, when this light splits, and we now have a surface that we can place ourselves on, we call this the night. And this is the night when here in New Mexico, you can see the stars on the horizon. We're at 2,000 meters, so you see the stars on the horizon all the way over, completely around. It's surrounded. These are the guiding stars. These are the lights that guide, and they are everywhere. And they have constellations, and these constellations are grouped in certain ways. So these grouped, and they have their own lineages. They have their own connections. They have their own linkages. Okay, so this is the nighttime, the star time, the light of these countless lights for countless worlds. And the Prophet ﷺ said that he is describe 3 different ways of understanding how this light is carried. It's carried with nabuwat, which is prophethood, and nabuwat is said a coming to water. So this is also the word we have for Sharia, a coming to water. One time or turn after another time. So one after the other. This is what nabuwat, the prophecy, is. So prophethood is coming to the water, one after the other, one after the other. And then we have messengers who come with one revelation after another for every time and for every place. So we have the prophets coming to the water, carrying us to the water, one after the other after the other. And all of these prophets then are the deputies of the first one, the first prophet, the Nur Muhammad. And all these messengers bringing laws are bringing laws for times and places, and they are bringing it the same law, which is the law of the first one, whose law will come out later and now at the same time, both. And these are also carried by the the ummahat, the mothers, the ummahat. And the are anything to which are collected things and adjoined. So things that are gathered together, stars that are gathered together in constellations. That's an ummahat. Those are mothers. The main or chief part of a thing, the collection, combination, the head or chief of a people. That's the the mother. So these prophets, messengers, and the ummahat are the ones which are carrying these lights that are coming throughout creation at all times. So our first view is on the circle is the view of Rahmah, of this kind mercy, and our last view is Rahmah, this kind mercy. And we call the last view the time of intercession. So this abd, I said, I could find out, could realize, Wednesday night, 3 o'clock, could see that this abd is the same as the ibad of Allah, all of the slaves of Allah. So this is humanity in the circle. And then when the humanity comes to this last part, just before the last, which is the first, they come resurrected and gathered together. And when they're resurrected and gathered together, they have a shafi, they have a shifa, an intercession. And shifa and shafi is the one who makes a number even. So odd numbers and even numbers. So the shafi, the one who is the evener, is the one who comes to you who are standing alone and says, I will be your second. I will pair with you and I'll help you by pairing with you, by being together with you in this situation of this last moment of the last hour of this creation. And so when that pairing takes place, then Allah looks at that who and sees his huwiyat. And his huwiyat at that moment is Arhamar Arahamin, the most kindly merciful of all of the kindly merciful. So at that moment, the most merciful of all the most mercifuls will come together and be seen as a pair, pairing with each individual in humanity. And then Allah is the witr, the odd number, and loves odd numbers. So when Allah sees 2, Allah becomes the third to be the odd number, and he loves the odd number. So now the 2 are paired and Allah is the third. These 2 are paired, Allah is the third. The 4 are paired, Allah is the 5th. The 6 are paired, Allah is the 7th. So making odd all of the pairs, all of the even numbers that have been made even by intercession, by shafi'ah. And so this love has come from the beginning. I am a treasure concealed, but I love to be recognized. And so this abd is created, who is the ibad Allah, all of the slaves of God, all of humanity, ends up here and requires now the intercession to become a pair have a second who will help them. And when that second comes to them, then the third comes. And so, alhamdulillah, we'll now, this is calling for the intercession for be the second for me.
Oh, Muhammad, first light of eternity. Oh, Ali, whirling lion of Allah. Oh, Hassan, beauty of lovers of beauty. Oh, send mystic moon of his heart. Oh, by pearl true, living essence of paradise, and light and lady Fatima. Oh, bright pearl of true, living essence of paradise, enlightened lady Fatima. Medet, Medet, helper of those who seek mystic union, La Rasulallah, Medet, 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 you who unveil the unity of being, Ya Rasulallah, Medet. The secret of the cathedral, the way to blessed sensation, the truth of grace in consciousness. The secret of the cathedrals, the way to blessed extinction, the way of grace in consciousness. Medet, 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 Ya Rasulallah. Help us and lift us up, unveil, awaken us, refine, illumine us, Ya Habib Allah. Medet, 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 Ya Rasulallah. Help us and lift us up, exalt and empty us, absorb and consume us, Ya Habib Allah. Medet, 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 Ya Rasulallah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. So that's why when Ibn Arabi was early on the path, he saw, I've got to go it alone, got to leave my body and leave this bulk and find out what the truth is. And then later on, then you find your pair, you find the pairs in the humanity of you, and you find your Fatima and Hassan and Hussein and all of these. And then when the intercessor, the Shafi, helps you, joins you, you say, Madad, Madad, help me. And Madad, Imdad is to extend the hand of help, extends the hand to help and say, I will be your second. We will be two together. And the moment we're two together, Allah is with her and loves the with her. Allah is the odd number and loves the odd number. So, okay.
Shuaib, while we're waiting for more questions, so does Allah love the individual, since that's an odd number?
Well, the individual, which is the abd, ABD, the abd, is the same and undifferentiable from the ibad, the plural. So the Nur Muhammad is the abd, the first abd, and the last abd, and is the circle of the abd, and so is the circle of the ibad, of the slaves and creatures of Allah. And so they are then one and the same.
Okay, we've got a few more questions. Can you please share more about what it means to find one's pair in life, then one's Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein?
So to what the lesson learned on the path then is that we are not an individual, isolated individual. And individual is that Greek idea of that you can't be further divided. And so the way light can't be divided, in the same way the abd, the slave, cannot be divided. And so there is no individual light different from another light. Light is light. And the abd is the abd, no matter what pollutions or impurities come. And so with this, to recognize one's identification and connection and union with the community, with the the mother. So the is the mother community, the ummah and the ummahat. So to see one's place within this humanity is to see that's our destiny, with where we came from. And so this is the way we move to what we want and love to be, is by seeing that we are not individual, that we are one and the same with all of the ibad Allah, all of these slaves, creatures of Allah. And Ibn Arabi keeps telling us that when the word ibadi, my slaves, that correlation is so important, because the moment we hear that we are correlated to Allah, then we will never leave existence.
Can you elaborate on the transition from Barzakh to light?
So the Barzakh, the key is that it's not a place that has volume. It's a place that has direction and it has dimension, but it has no volume. It's in the sense of direction. You can go left, right, and you can orient yourself a certain way, this way, that way, but you can't move from one place to another place. So there is no place or volume to move in. There is no space. So if there is no space, then the face that you are on, if you're on this side and the light is on the other side, and there is a face between it, then that is why we get so confused about is there a separation between this light and that light? And that's why we look at the moon and we say there is a separator between the sunlight and the moon. And so when I see the moon, you could say, oh, I'm seeing the sunlight, or you could say I'm seeing the moonlight, which is different, which is it's light, but it's the one that's light, which is on our side. And so the Barzakh then, as a face that without volume, there is that it seems to be immediate, without a mediation. It seems to be immediate because that's how it feels. It is only intelligible. We can only imagine that there must be some separation. So the vessel of water with impurities in it, there is a separation between every impurity and the water, and the impurity never pollutes the water. And so we are always separate, and that is our existence. Because we are separate and we are not infiltrated one to the other, then we are correlated back to the divine light.
Can you again, who is the Shafiq?
So Shifa and Shafa'a and Shafi. So we say when we call blessings and peace to the Prophet ﷺ, we call him Rasul, messenger. We call him Habib, beloved, and we call him Shafi, the intercessor. And so the intercessor is the word shafa'a means to make two, to even up. And that means that the Shafi, the one who is interceding, is joining you and saying, I will help you and I will be number two for you so that we together will be able to be victorious. And the way that we're victorious is to become two, so that then the third can be third. Can the Barzakh? So the Barzakh, because the Barzakh two of the same thing. No, because light is light and water is pure. And so there's no separation inside water itself. There's separation from water, from pure water, from impurities, and they never mix. And then within the water, within the light, there is no subdivision. And Ibn Arabi says that's why it's nur as-samawati wal ard, light of the heavens and the earth. It's one light. There's one light. And he says this light is not the light of guidance or the light of the way other commentators think. He says, no, this is the light which dispels the darkness. Okay.
So the perfect man can do. So the Barzakh so we are all in the Barzakh. So there is no differentiation there. We are all slaves. We are all ibad, creatures of the divine. And there is no differentiation in humanity about that. In the step level of humanity, there is no hierarchy. No one is more slave or less slave than anyone else. In the same way, the key then is to be a slave, which has no adjectives. So you can't have a good slave and a bad slave. You can't be a good creature or a bad creature. You are a creature. And that's just the way that is. Oh, I see Omar has come. Didn't see you in time.
Yeah, sorry. I forgot the time change. I forgot that it's 4 o'clock, not 5 o'clock our time today.
Well, it's
the clock you hadn't, and I remembered last week, but this week I didn't. I thought starting now.
It's so good to see you. And of course, as I'm looking at that page, I'm thinking of you all the time. So that was good. Looks like
someone's, I don't know if they have a question.
From Austria is waving. Österreich. Okay, please. Yeah.
Maybe he was just.
Yeah, now you're.
I guess we have time. You can explain how someone can sign up to your YouTube.
That's Mustafa knows that. I don't know much about that. Someone speak up. Well, okay. I think Richard and Cecilia know. Please let us. Okay.
You're still muted.
Thank you. Yeah, we only just came in. What was the question?
Oh, yeah. We're just now looking at the YouTube, the signing up for YouTube. Is Mustafa still here?
There's a link on.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it directly from the person who knows all these things.
Absolutely.
Mustafa, please.
Well, sorry, not my video's off, but you can basically go to thefutuhat.com and you'll see the playlist from YouTube there. It's so every time we have a new one, we add it to that playlist. So, and you can get the YouTube address from there. Just click on the video. It'll take you to the YouTube channel. Yeah, and if you want to join the newsletter, join on that site as well, and you'll get weekly announcements with all the links for the rest of the podcast as well.
Good, thank you. So yeah, from the side that we also have the insane camel. Yeah, so there is the insan camel, the insane camel. So that is there. Yeah, so time. I think the next time will be okay because the U.S. is changing daylight savings time Sunday. I think something like that. So we'll figure it out.
I had a question for Mustafa. I'm sorry. I'm having so much trouble. I'm really having a lot of trouble in trying to get into the YouTube. And every time I try to do something, it keeps on going into something like you want to update your preferences. I don't need to update my preferences. It seems like a default or something.
Okay.
That's the reason I put
There's,
out.
just so you know, there's no way to sign up for YouTube. What you're doing, I think, on the page itself is you're trying to sign up for the newsletter. And that's a separate issue. You're already signed up for the newsletter. You've received it, I think. What you need to do, there's a YouTube video right on the page as well. That is simply an embedded version of the video that's on our YouTube channel. And, you know, if you just click on that, you can get yourself to YouTube itself, where you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And every time there's a new video, you'll be notified as well.
Oh, so
we can discuss offline as well. You can write me again. Okay.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
right, Mustafa, directly. That's good. That's good. Okay.
Oh, the internal comment question, because when I was reading Ibn Arabi in your translation, it suddenly struck me that the Insani Kamil, because at that time they become, or rather when the transformation brings in an awareness of the khayal, the creative imagination. And that is the point where one also becomes, the role of the barzakh also comes in through that. I don't know whether I got it or not, but that's what came to me, and I thought I would ask you.
Okay. Well, what we've been looking at here is in a sense from the divine point of view, or the divine perspective. And the idea of light is that what light does is it makes the darkness dispel. It dispels, disperses, it evaporates, whatever it does to the darkness. And so when the light hits something, its darkness is dispelled. And the darkness here is the light blocking, which means me, my bulk, my body is dispelled. And that's why all that is seen is who. So when Allah looks at someone, all that Allah can see is himself, his huwiyat, his who. And so from our perspective, we may have a different perspective. We may see ourselves as being more or less polluted or impure or this or that or hierarchy. But from the perspective of light, there is only, when light hits something, all that can be seen is the who, the huwiyat, the who he is of the divine. And so that's why Ibn Arabi had that, he completes, in a sense, he continues the prayer that, or the statement that I saw from nur, light, from whence shall I see who? From light. So and if I am light, if I am made light, then I won't be able to see of me anything. I won't be able to see me at all, because there is, light has dispersed any darknesses. And so the darkness, once it's dispersed, all that can be seen is what the light shows, and the light shows its who, or his who. So that's from the divine perspective, of the perspective. If you travel on light, that's what you see when you arrive. And so this is why those who see from that perspective begin to talk about the Nur Muhammad as the Abd and the Ibad Allah, all of the creatures and slaves of Allah, as one light of humanity. And so with that light of humanity, we no longer see the particulars, the darknesses, any kind of adjectives. All we see are the adjectives that are coming, the divine adjectives.
So does that make us, like in the darkness, we are also with our jism, our body is the darkness. At the same time, we can be transformed into pure light. Although everything is one ultimately, from what I heard today from you, and it is evident in what I read. The that role does come in to the...
Well, so from this perspective, that when Bayezid Bistami approaches Allah, Allah brings him close
And then because he had fainted, he had been created and he fainted right away because he can't handle being away from Allah. So Allah says, bring him back to me. So it brings him back to him. And then he says, now I will give you strength, and you will now go to creation, and you will have no adjectives, and you have no description and no epithets. And so when you go to creation with no adjectives, when they see you, they will see me. And so that is that. So whose sifat, whose adjectives are being seen? So that becomes a question. Okay.
Thank you.
So another question, can our vision, quote, enter into another light dimension, quote, which is barzakh?
See, so that's that there is no move there. In the vessel of water, the impurity cannot penetrate the pureness of the water. And so the vessel says this is pure water. And the lawgiver, the Sharia, says you can drink this water and you can use it for ablutions, even though there are grains of sand in it or something. And so even though there are impurities in it, it is pure because what you are looking at and using is water. And water can never have any barrier infiltrate by impurity. And so you're either looking at the perspective of the impurities, the grains of sand, the darknesses, or you're looking at water. And there is no such thing as water which has been infiltrated by impurity. So there's one or the other. You either see with your eye or you see with Allah's eye. And if Allah becomes the eye with which you see, then that's the eye with which you see. And that's why Ibn Arabi keeps telling us only Allah sees Allah. And that's why when the Prophet was asked, he said, light. From where shall I see who? The answer is, from light I shall see who. And who of me sees of me nothing but his who.
Another question, is the darkness our life lessons give to us to inspire the desire to return to the light which is always within us?
Right, so that's how Ibn Arabi says that when I looked at my own darkness, I realized that there must be something of light there or I wouldn't be able to see it. And what the light which is there is the light of being. So being is a soft light, which by seeing being, you can say, I see this being, I see that being. It's a soft light because it hasn't dispersed and dispelled the darkness. The light, which is the nur, which is the inaccessible, unattainable reality of light, that is the one that when it looks, everything is wiped out and there is only itself, light self, that is seen. So so that's, again, that's looking at our perspective. So with the union that we want takes place by, so make me light, which means make me you, and the you cannot be done or made. Therefore, it is make me realize, make me understand and aware that light is what there is. And that's the special nature of humanity, the light of humanity. The special nature is that humanity is the place for this light.
So, Shuaib, how does that fit with the expression "die before you die"? Okay, is that you becoming, in a sense, that light that you see? All you see is the light.
Yeah. So die before you die. Wake up from the dream and realize it was a dream. That is the process of going from make me light to make me aware that all is light. And that all that is seen of me is your who, your adjectives, and your being and your light. And so that is a waking up. And so it's not, there's no mechanical transformation. There's a waking up transformation. Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Good. Well, thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful to see you. Beautiful faces. Beautiful beings of light. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. And so everyone, let's all find our mother community, find the ones and be twos with the ones. And then from that twos, from that community, this is where we see humanity. And we see that there's no separation, that we are a carpet of fabric with little things sticking up, which are all interlinked, all interwoven, all the same carpet. And that is, so if you ask who is the Nur Muhammad, how is that abd different from the other abds, the other ibad? The answer is, well, no. And so that's how we see. That's how we see. So the slide of humanity, the circle, and then we come around. And so Ibn Arabi keeps telling us about the circle. We start out with rahmah, start out with kind gentleness, and then we end up with kind gentleness. So what can we say? But we start with gentleness and we end up with gentleness. And so alhamdulillah. So thank you all. Take care.